بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين نبينا مولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. So Alhamdulillah, we resume our fiqh classes after Hajj and after a little bit of a break. Um, Alhamdulillah, these are very important classes, I would believe, because these are covering very important day-to-day topics. And I highly encourage everyone to participate and be involved in these classes and attend if you are able to. If you're not able to attend the class, then try to listen to the recording online, inshallah. There will be recordings uploaded weekly, inshallah, on our YouTube, inshallah. Today is a very important topic, and we'll jump straight into it, inshallah, which is the topic of death and janazah. Right? So we begin with uh, we begin as the person is passing away. So what I want everyone to do is just imagine one of our loved ones is passing away, right? Imagine that, and then take yourself through the process. So we'll go through the entire process, essentially what you're supposed to do as they're passing away, and then, immediately after they've passed away, and moving forward from there. So inshallah, put yourselves in that situation, and then you'll be truly appreciative. Then you'll understand, okay, this is how significant, how important this is. So we begin, he says, إذا احتضر الرجل وجه إلى القبلة على الشق الأيمن ولقن شهادتين. Right? He says that when a person has neared their time, then they should be faced towards the qibla, ideally on his right side, right? So for example, if you can turn that person towards the right side, meaning their body, you turn to the right side, but that's not possible for many situations. In many situations, it's not possible to move the person, where they are, right? So another possibility, again, these are recommendations, right? It's recommended to do this, to move them towards the qibla direction, right? And this is, again, last moments, right? Last moments, the person is about to pass away. If you're able to physically move them in that direction, then good. If not, the better suggestion which is given is that their feet should face towards the qibla, right? Many people, they think this is disrespect. It's not disrespect, but rather it is, that's the way that is the most, pragmatic, right? It's the most, the way that makes the most sense, right? That you put their feet facing towards the qibla, and if that's difficult also, if it's not possible to face their feet towards the qibla, then don't even worry about it. Again, these are just recommendations, right? So imagine someone is on their last moments. Ideally, try to face them towards the qibla. If that's not possible, then leave them as they are. And وَلُقِّنَ الشَّهَادَتَيْن. And you should do talqeen. It's known as talqeen, right? Talqeen, as the scholars they explain, right? Okay, so before talqeen, right? He says that facing them towards qibla, this is sunnah. This is something which is considered as sunnah, number one. Number two, it's recommended, it's sunnah, it's recommended for the relatives and the family around to recite Surah Yasin, right? It's recommended for the loved ones to come around, and everyone should be reciting Surah Yasin, right? Because many people, what they do is they just stand around, whether in the hospital or at home, for example, they're just standing around, they're just, maybe some people are crying, some people are just talking, and it's not appropriate, right? You're not helping the deceased in any way. If you want to help the deceased, recite Surah Yasin, right? So get everyone to recite Surah Yasin. Everyone should be sitting there and doing some dhikr or reciting Surah Yasin. So it's recommended to recite Surah Yasin. Others, they recommend other surahs, but at least Yasin. If a person does not know Yasin, then at least Surah Al-Ikhlas, Qul Huwallahu Ahad, for example, or any surah, whichever surah that you know, keep reading it over and over and over. This will, inshallah, help that person. Right? Now, you should do talqeen. Why should you do talqeen? There's a hadith. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, let me define talqeen. Talqeen is to encourage a person to say La ilaha illallah. Right? To encourage a person to say La ilaha illallah. This is known as talqeen. Right? Now, why should you do talqeen? The hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says that man kana akhiru kalami la ilaha illallah dakhala al-jannah. That the person whose last utterance or last statement is La ilaha illallah, he will enter Jannah. Right? So that therefore we encourage the person who's on his deathbed to recite the kalima. Now, how do you do talqeen? The scholars, they say that you should stand near that person and in an audible voice, in a voice that they can hear you, everyone should say La ilaha illallah. You should keep saying La ilaha illallah, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah. Keep repeating the shahadatain, right? Keep repeating shahadatain. So again, imagine my father is on his deathbed. I'm just using my father as an example, right? Imagine my father is on his deathbed. We should gather around him and do talqeen. Just everyone should say La ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah. Recite Surah Yasin, or everyone who's around, and just audibly recite Yasin, audibly do talqeen. Everyone should recite kalima. Talqeen means to encourage. Now, how do you generally encourage? By telling the person say. But the scholars, they say here, you should not say the kalima. Don't tell the person to say kalima. Why? Because he's in battle. That person is at war with shaitan. Those are the last few moments. Shaitan is trying his absolute best to get that person to say something that will nullify all of their good deeds. So if you say La ilaha illallah, and he says, no, I will not say it, that's very dangerous for his iman, right? It's very dangerous for a person's iman, right? So therefore, do not tell the person, say. Rather, we say it. And by saying it, inshallah, they'll be encouraged in a way to say La ilaha illallah, right? So you stand around the person, you say ashhadu an la, say everyone around should recite ashhadu an la ilaha ashhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah in an audible voice, but don't tell that person to say La ilaha illallah or say ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, right? So this is something that's generally should be done, right? Talqeen should generally be done as that person is on their deathbed. This is very important to recite. Questions? Any questions so far on this? Okay, all right. So again, imagine our loved one is on their deathbed, and this is the situation. Now, وَإِذَا مَاتَ. Now, of course, they'll pass away. When they pass away, شَدُّوا لَحْيَيْهِ وَغَمَّضُوا عَيْنَيْهِ. Right? When they pass away, two things should be done, right? Sometimes what happens is the eyes open up, right? Other times what happens is that the mouth remains open, right? And that person is left like that. That should not be done, right? Rather, as soon as possible, you should close the eyes, right? And the scholars, they even mention how you should close the eyes. They say that the most beloved or the closest family member, in the softest way possible, close their eyes. In a soft and a loving manner, close their eyes. And then you should sort of like kind of close their jaw, right? So you can use like a soft, some piece of cloth or something and wrap it around their head, essentially to close their mouth and not allow saliva or anything else, or to like, any foul, because the smell may start coming out of their mouth and so on. So once they pass away, close their eyes, and if necessary, close their mouth as well. That's what generally should be done, right? That being said, right? Now, what do you do? Practical standpoint, right? Now, a person has passed away. What you should do next is call Janazah services, right? There's a company here, mashallah. They do it very well. You can call any company, obviously, but Janazah services, they're based out of Chantilly, mashallah. They're pretty good, mashallah. They have the entire procedure, they have everything there, right? You call them and you tell them. Ideally, you should call them in advance. You let them know that this is what's happening. My relative, my loved one is in this situation, and last moments, for example. So anytime. So at least they're aware. Generally, they're on call 24/7. Generally, they're always available, generally. But just in case, let them know in advance so that they are aware. Whether the person is at home or the person is in the hospital, we should call them in advance and let them know that this is what's happening. Okay, you call them, and if it's early enough, they will speak to you and coordinate which graveyard, which cemetery you want to use, and how you want the entire procedure to be, right? So to my knowledge, they're very good in this regard, mashallah. They're reasonable when it comes to cost, and at the same time, they'll discuss the cemetery and all of those details with you. So that way, you know how it's going to be. Ideally, for all of us, we should plan. For example, if you know that someone is going to pass away, someone is nearing death, then you should plan this in advance, right? Speak to. So I've had multiple people do this, by the way, right? And I'm not shy for these conversations. I don't mind. Like, I'm open with these conversations. If someone's, and I've done this multiple times, I've gone to the family, and we've discussed options, and whether a person is nearing their last moments or a few weeks, few months in advance. We've had conversations on what to do, especially as they're nearing their final moments, right? The scholars, they also mentioned that it's also recommended to fulfill their debts, right? Any debts that they had, any liabilities that they had, try to pay them off. My recommendation also, again, the earlier you can do it, the better, right? So, for example, if you know this person is, for example, one family's house that I visited, the the person he has a form of cancer, and it's very late, and they can pass away at any moment, right? So therefore, I visited their house and we had a conversation, and we discussed what to do and so on and so forth. But debts is the first thing, right? Try to get them. So if you know in advance and the person is alive, like they're able to communicate and so on, they should communicate all debts to you, right? They should know, okay, I owe this person money, I owe that person money, I owe this bank, I owe that, I owe these things. So try to absolve them of their liabilities as soon as possible, right? Now those are the financial liabilities, right? Along with that, right? I'll tell you. So there was another family that came to me in the office, right? And the father was elderly, and he came and he wanted to talk. So we set a meeting. He sat down and we talked, right? Very elderly man, and he sat down and he said, "I have some issues," and then he was struggling to speak, by the way, right? And long story short, he he was struggling to forgive himself for some things that happened 20, 30 years ago. It's a very long time ago, right? He said some things and he felt bad, right? He said some things to his brother. He was a bit disrespectful to his brother. It's something that we consider as very insignificant. But he said some things to his brother years ago, and his brother passed away, but he was still concerned about that. So I spoke to him, and alhamdulillah, I spoke to him at length. By the end of our meeting, I saw him like visibly, visibly let go of that stress, visibly release that bulge, that weight that was on his heart. He passed away within a couple of days from that meeting. He passed away a couple of days later, right? But it's very important that yes, one is the financial, one is the financial liability, another is the emotional liabilities that they have, and then also the spiritual liabilities, right? So spiritually, for example, you should ask them. Again, all of us should plan for this. By the way, this is like open conversation so that we can prepare. There's no guarantee of life for me or you or anyone. So we should have all of this done at all times. If necessary, my recommendation is have like a document, like a printed document, right? Because online, your family may not be able to access it, whatever it is, but a printed document, maybe you have a safe or something in your house or in the bank or something. Print a document and with like important details, like very, and again, this should be sensitive, make sure it's safe. Obviously, you don't want people to, access it, but like make sure, like, for example, maybe you can have your phone password on there or something that you can access my phone and go on my phone, and in my phone, you go on this folder and you'll have access to my bank accounts and 1, 2, 3, all of these things, for example, right? And then also on that paper, you can say that, okay, you can, I owe this much. Every year you can say, okay, I owe this much in money. I owe this much in zakat. I have missed this much. I have not completed Hajj yet, although it's fard on me, and so on and so forth. We should have this, a printed document. Don't just have it online or on your phone, because your phone, something may happen. You may lose your phone. They may not have access to your phone, whatever else it may be. So have a printed document saying that for like more sensitive documents, for more sensitive information, such as like bank account, those things, I would say keep it more safe. However you want to do. I'm not gonna, last thing is you come to me later and tell me that, oh, Imam Sahib, you said to put it in my house, and I put it in my house. Someone came and took that document and they robbed me. Oh, what can I do, right? So ideally, have that document very safe, the bank account, and that information. Inshallah, you can get it. Like obviously, you'll get it if you share the death certificate and all of those things. But obviously, that's much later, right? So ideally, have the bare minimum, like even for not only bank account, but for example, like investments, for example. Many people, they may not know, your family may not even know your investments, for example, right? So all of these things, try to outline it in a paper, in couple papers, for example, couple documents, right? So pay off the all types of debts, right? I said financial debts, emotional debts, right? They owe someone, like, not meaning they hurt someone, for example. So ask all those people, if you know that this person is about to pass away, excuse me, reach out to their contacts. Especially sometimes you have like family or friends that maybe they didn't speak to for years for some small issue. Maybe try to do salah. Try to, for example, if a relative of yours is passing away and you know that maybe he didn't speak to his brother for many years, so call them and tell them this: my father is passing away. Uncle, please, please forgive him, and so on and so forth. Right? And then also the spiritual debts, right? Whatever debts that they owe spiritually. For example, they miss salawat. For example, they have to pay zakat. For example, they have to do hajj, and so on and so forth. Make sure you do all of these things. Also, Hajj remains fard, very important, right? If Hajj becomes fard on someone, meaning they have the amount of that's necessary, and what do you call it? And they don't go for Hajj, that obligation does not go away. Same thing goes for zakat. That obligation does not go away. For salah, Allah Ta'ala may forgive, but if a person gives wasiyah, then you must also fulfill the wasiyah of the amount that's necessary, which is the sadaqatul fitr amount. That amount should be given, and there's some detail to it. If someone wants those details, if someone has many salawat that they've missed, you can speak to me direct separately, inshallah, and we can talk about that. But ideally, all the salawat that they missed, the hajj, zakat, those things should be cleared out. Ideally, well before they pass away. If not, then after their death, immediately after their death. Questions?
Oh, yes. So the document we are talking about, it could be a will that you can mention all these things in a will also.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. It can be a will. Whatever is safe, but yes, make sure you should have it. Yeah. But the will, the reason why I'm not saying will is because a will is kind of difficult to change, right? You can't keep updating it, right? But for example, if you have one-page document, maybe financial stuff you can keep in your will. But for the religious things, I didn't give my zakat, for example, this year yet. I still have X amount of money of zakat remaining. For example, I have not done my hajj yet. You can update this regularly. That way, yes, it can be a part of your will, but at the same time, it should be something that is updated.
Right here in this country, when we are buried in the graveyard of non-believers, like next to them, are we? I mean, do we hear if God forbid if they are panic or any other stuff going on, or it is recommended to be buried in Muslim graveyard?
Very good question. Very important question, which is about should we be buried in Muslim graveyard or non-Muslim graveyard, and what happens, right? So the thing is that very important. Listen, there's a hadith. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that every creature hears the horrors of the grave, except for humans and jinn. Every creature hears the punishment of the grave, except for us and jinnat. We don't hear the horrors, the screams, and those things, right? So is it possible that the mayyit hears the screams of the other graves? It's possible, right? My recommendation is ideally avoid burying immediately next to non-Muslims. We live in a non-Muslim country, I understand, and we don't have many nearby options, right? I know all the graveyards in the nearby area all are mixed, right? If you travel a bit, an hour plus, then you get the other graveyards, right? But locally, we don't really have full Muslim graveyard cemeteries, right? You have certain sections. So ideally, within that section, of course, try to keep them, right? But I've seen in many cases where next to the Muslim graveyards, you have the non-Muslims also, like right next to each other. So Ideally, we should have a graveyard within half an hour to 45-minute distance. I would say this is ideal, right? Right now, we don't have that. To my knowledge, we don't have a fully Muslim cemetery. Yes, yeah? Within half an hour, we don't have a fully Muslim cemetery. You have something a bit, an hour plus away, but that's a bit further. The reason why it should be closer is because it's recommended to visit the graveyard if you can once a week, if you can. Now, if it's an hour plus, it just becomes a bit more difficult, right? Even if it's your father or mother, it becomes hard to go once a week. Even though you'll say, no, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go every week. Then people get, lazy and caught up and so on, right? So ideally, we should all be concerned about this. If we don't have a graveyard, we should all be thinking, why don't I have a graveyard next to me? So I want my loved ones, those of us who are a bit older, for example, anyone, forget older, right? Death has nothing to do, right, with age, right? Or death can come to anyone. We should all be concerned. Why don't I have a graveyard within half an hour distance? I need a graveyard. It's my life and my death. My family should come visit me, right? So there's nothing we can do right now. At the very least, try to go to the nearest graveyard. And my suggestion is, yes, try to bury them in a Muslim cemetery, because you don't want to be buried. You don't want to bury your loved ones next to where the adhab of Allah Ta'ala is happening, and your loved one, the mercy of Allah Ta'ala, inshallah, is coming to that person. But it just doesn't feel right. So from an Islamic standpoint, it's okay, but I don't recommend it.
Like when our conference passes, whoever it is, why do we have to go to the graveyard? Can't we recite Quran, Surah Yasin, or anything at all?
Yeah.
But when do
Yeah.
istighfar for them and do sadaqah, is that going to be different?
Good question, right? All of these are very good questions, right? That why do we need to go to the graveyard, right? One is to benefit ourselves, that we will benefit by going to the graveyard. It'll soften our heart. As Rasulullah SAW tells us that we should go to the graveyards, it'll soften our hearts, right? Number one, right? When you go to the graveyard, you remember death, of course, and you see a family member and you realize how short this life is. This will remind you of, and this will soften your heart, number one. But also it benefits the deceased as well. It helps them. Why? According to many scholars, and according to our scholars, we say that the dead can hear you. So when you go to the graveyard, you meet your brother, they can hear you. They can hear you. They hear that this is Sa'ad coming to visit me, and so on. So yes, it is extremely beneficial for you to physically go. So some people, what happens is their parent passes away in some other country, right? They do the janazah, right? And they don't go, right? I'm not saying, okay, you don't have to go. Don't delay the janazah for you, but you should go. Within the next week, month, year, go. When Mufti Saab passed away, I went to Mufti Saab. Like, I made a purpose to go and visit Harun Saab and Mufti Saab rahmatullah alayh. I wanted to go visit my teachers' graves. Because, and also when I go to Bangladesh, I make it a point to go visit my grandparents. So I never met them. I've never met my grandparents from my father's side. I never met, but I make it a point to go visit them. My sister also passed away. I make it a point to go and visit their graves. And my grandfather from my mom's side, I always, definitely, every time I go and visit them. Same thing, all of us, make it a point and go visit them. If your loved ones have passed away, you don't have to go every year, but every now and then, go visit them. They're like waiting for that moment that my loved one will come and say salam. And so yes, of course, regularly we should be making dua for them. Regularly we should be reciting Quran for them and so on. According to the vast majority of scholars, yes, we believe that isalu thawab, which is the sending of thawab, this reaches the dead. The vast majority of scholars, they agree on this, right? So send them good deeds, recite Quran, send them. I'm reading this Quran, and Ya Allah, send the reward of this Quran to my father who passed away. Send the reward of this to my mother who passed away. Do this regularly, right? I'm praying 2 rak'ats, Ya Allah, this is for my parents who passed away, and so on and so forth, right? You don't have to do some people, they do like Barsi, like the year, what do you call it? I don't know what you call it, Mangla, but like the anniversary of their death and so on. You don't have to do it on that anniversary date, right? You don't have to do it on that day, but just do it. Do it like on a regular basis, weekly, monthly, yearly, whatever it is. Remember them. Make dua for them. Some people, they gather. Some people, they read Quran together. It's fine. Nothing wrong with it. So long as you're not doing it on a specific date, thinking that there's extra reward on this specific date. right? Then I'm doing it on, like some people, they do 40 days. 40 days immediately, then I'll do it. No, there's no need to specify a specific number for that, right? But rather, we should do it. Yes.
When you say recite surah, the first one, Surah Yasin, is it louder or
Yeah, ideally audibly. Audibly, meaning like a bit loudly. No, everyone should read separately. Don't read too loud, obviously. Don't disturb him or her, whoever it is. But yes, you should recite audibly. That way they can hear a little bit. So, Yasin, Quran al Hakim, like softly, that way they're not inconvenienced, but it's soothing. It should be soothing. Question? You had a question? Someone else had a question. Okay.
For the Hajj, somebody saying that you should be within the 1/3 of the Masiyah. So that is the year Hajj Badal, not the. But if you do it otherwise, no, because Hajj was first, but it was not made Masiyah. Those two.
Yeah. So the question is very important about So if a person gives wasiyah that okay, I have zakat pending, I have Hajj pending, I have this number of salawat pending, I need you to give dua on my behalf, right? So in that case, yes, a mayyit, a person who's about to pass away, they're only they only have control over 1/3 of their wealth. So that means that you can only fulfill their Hajj, you can only give their zakat, their whatever, from that 1/3, their religious obligations, not the financial ones. The financial obligations, if they owe money, you have to give whatever money they owe, you must give it. But for religious obligations, you are limited to 1/3 of their entire wealth, right? So technically, for example, let's say someone leaves $50,000, right? Hajj, for example, is 10,000, for example, right? That falls within 1/3 of their wealth. So because they gave the wasiyah, you must perform the Hajj Badal. Either you can perform it or someone else can perform it. Some people, they have scholars do it, for example, because they know that inshallah the scholar, they'll do it correctly, right? And generally, for example, like inshallah I plan to go for Hajj every year, for example, right? So like, for example, some people, they send scholars, for example, right? That they can, inshallah, they can do it properly, and inshallah they'll pray for them and so on. But anyone can go, essentially, right? Anyone can go on on the deceased behalf, within the 1/3 of the money, that would be sufficient, and that amount, that's necessary. Yes, of course, if all of the heirs, they agree, the wuratha, if they agree that, you know what, our father did not go for Hajj, my brother did not go for Hajj, now he only left $10,000, but we want his Hajj to be fulfilled, right? And so we don't mind giving up our shares to make sure that he goes for Hajj. That's also okay, right? Same thing with zakat, right? Let's say a person left 50,000 and their zakat is 10,000, right? Then that's fine, give it. But let's say their zakat is 10,000 and they only have 10,000. In that case, you can only give from 1/3, and the remainder you have to take permission from the inheritors. The inheritor says no, that was their response. They should have done it in their lifetime. If they didn't do it, that's their responsibility. But good question.
So if a person has $10,000, right, and the Hajj is $10,000, but he's not sick, is nothing yet, the Hajj is purged on it.
Yes.
Then if we keep that $10,000 on a side for Hajj, when he's healthier,
Yes.
then what?
Yes. So
Then something happens to it.
okay, so a person has 10,000.
Yeah.
They have money for Hajj. They're sick? No,
he's not sick. He's healthy. But
Okay.
he put the 10,000 on the side for Hajj. This is just for Hajj.
Okay.
And then
They pass away.
he
Oh,
passes away.
that doesn't matter. Same thing. Same rule. Meaning
Then also
all of their wealth, only 1/3. All of their wealth will be taken, and he will only be allowed to use, or the inheritors will only be allowed to use 1/3 to fulfill his wasiyah, right? But if the inheritors, they say that no, we want the Hajj Badal to go through, then they can agree that all of his money can go for Hajj. But otherwise,
when he's healthy, then also he cannot. Then also 1/3 will.
it doesn't matter whether he's healthy or sick. Only 1/3 of his money he has access to, essentially. Any questions? We'll wrap up here. Any last questions? Yeah, online also, any questions? Okay. Feel free, you can text me if you have any further questions. We just did like technically 2 lines, right? This is a very important topic. And we'll talk about washing the mayyit, inshallah, next week, inshallah. But feel free to text me if you have any further questions. Jazakumullah khairah. May Allah Ta'ala grant shifa to all those who are sick. May Allah Ta'ala grant long lives filled with khair and afiyah to us and our loved ones. Ameen. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.